Hey everyone, welcome back. As upon request today, we're gonna take a look at a Gloom Nidus build, so let's get started. His one is Virulence. Now this is an ability that sends a spike of infested growth forwards from Nidus into your enemies. Any enemy in the path hit adds into the mutation stacks counter for Nidus. Each hit increases the stack by 1 bar, where 5 bars are needed to increase your stacks by 1. His 2 is Larva, his Helminth ability and also his main form of CC. It will radially drag in all the enemies into a ragdoll state from where the larva is placed using your reticle. His 3 is Parasitic Link. This can either link to an ally and boost both yours and theirs ability strength, or link to an enemy and function as a damage link, converting some of the damage done to Nidus to them. Finally, his 4 is Ravenous, an ability that produces an infested area with maggots that will swarm your nearby enemies. Tagging them with your Virulence will blow them up to do extra damage. They will also produce a health regen for Nidus so long as they are attached to enemies. They will also regenerate your health per second while also adding back into your mutation stacks per enemy hit. Finally, his passive builds off of his mutation meter, where if he's downed and he has more than 15 stacks available, it will consume them all and instantly revive him with 50% health. Now that we know how Nidus works, let's take a look at how I kitted him. So we're still keeping Virulence on the build. This will be your main way to build up stacks quickly at the start of any mission so that you can reach 15 and be safe, acting as an extra life. His 2, Larva, will be used as our main force of CC to pull in enemies for easier priming, while the ragdoll state will also be stacked multiplicatively with Gloom's Slow. 3, his Parasitic Link, can really only be used properly in team play, where he can use the extra strength to amplify the Gloom's Slow. Finally, we have replaced his Ravenous with Gloom. This functions very well, being able to scale the slow off of his 3, and none of the other abilities really are affected that much by duration, and Larva wants low duration. This way we can cap out the efficiency, making the drain very easy to handle. So we're gonna step right into the build. You can see that I'm slotting growing power like normal. Conveniently, Nidus has AV polarity for his aura, so you don't need to change that. We're also running a little bit lower strength than you'd usually expect on a Gloom build, and this is due to Parasitic Link's synergy, as I stated before. You also get to double dip in growing power because it will affect Parasitic Link, and then that boosted Parasitic Link will affect Gloom while also proccing growing power again for the final cast. You'll also notice that we're running higher range than normal at 190%, and this will fuel both the slow range of Gloom as well as the pull of Larva. Range is very important because we will be using this to CC the room since we don't have shield gate. This will also make it easier for you to build mutation stacks with Virulence due to more enemies being caught in the larva. Now this is a team build where you can actually get the strength bonus from Parasitic Link, so we're going to run Adaptation and Umbral Vitality. Note this is for quick steel path missions like Capture, Extermination, Sabotage, etc. It is not for Endurance. We're sticking with 40% duration as this allows you to still maintain the minimum drain when at 190 uncapped efficiency on drain calculations. This also cuts down the larva itself to a 3-ish second duration, which is perfect for spamming CC. Nidus does not innately have energy regen on his kit, so we're going to slot in Arcane Energize. This is also the reason why we're running all the way up at 190 efficiency and 40% duration so that we can spam his other abilities to our heart's content. Naturally, we'll also be running Arcane Eruption for that knockdown CC that gets amplified by Gloom's Slow. Because we have no magnetic, I'm considering running Worm Prime for Negate, which can block any status effect once every 5 seconds. We also have the standard quality of life primed regen so our Sentinel survives longer, and also the Synth Fiber mods. This will also holster reload your primer as you switch between it and melee. Then we got Primed Animal Instinct for our radar, Vacuum for loot, and Fired Up, which will work handy for our Sentinel weapon today, Verglass. Finally, don't forget to slot in Assault mode so that your Sentinel actually attacks, as this will be required to use it as a form of CC and priming. Now for the weapon, I've chosen Verglass, which is literally just a Glaxon copy-pasted into a Sentinel weapon. This is a beam with very high status, and we're building it for viral and heat. The principle is that it will instantly prime anything to max that you can't immediately kill around you. Then punch through so that you can tag everything that's ragdolled in the larva, a smite adjusted as needed, and a riven, but that really isn't necessary. Alternatively, you can run Panzer Vulpaphyla so you can have AoE viral spread. This will give you a bit more consistency on your damage application and less reliance on your primer. This can also keep you alive if you do happen to run out of mutation stacks to use the passive, since Nidus does not innately have access to iframes when things go bad. So let's take a look how he plays. First we're going to cast our Larva for Ragdoll CC, then prime it up with Kuva Nukor to proc growing power, and finally cast Gloom for slow. This is effectively a 94% slow, even though we're only running 170% strength. However, this does require you to have casted Parasitic Link on a teammate Warframe. Spectres do not count, so this is why I consider it the team build. Once you have it up, all you have to do is just prime enemies or larva them as needed, and then a little bit of spin to win, or your melee of choice. The Arcane Eruption is also super handy for CCing anything that does not immediately die, as well as covering any other enemies that have come within range or were not grabbed by the larva. Speaking of team builds, you probably want something for solo as well. As I said, 170% strength only works if you actually have something to cast Link on. So let's switch to that. This is the solo build that I came up with. The first thing you'll notice is we no longer have adaptation and vitality, and this is because I really couldn't fit it onto the build since we need to pump out more strength, as you won't be able to rely on your Parasitic Link. Overall, the playstyle is still the same, but you just don't have the initial tankiness at the start of the mission, and you are susceptible to dying as you need to build up those 15 plus mutation stacks first. We also had to give up a little bit of range, but I don't think this has too much of an effect. What you will notice is you can no longer larva down the entire tile, and you may have to cast it twice. Even with transient fortitude, we're still able to maintain at least 40% duration with a regular continuity, allowing us to keep a very low drain and have Gloom permanently active, while still being able to spam larva. So let's check out how this plays this time. While it's very similar to the original demonstration, you just don't have to cast your Parasitic Link. You still larva things in and proc your growing power with your primer before you cast your slow. This still reaches up to a 92% slow on the build and has fairly high range. Now what if you're looking for something that's viable for endurance instead? The first thing I'll tell you is you can't really make a perfect solo Nidus build for endurance. You can make it work, but it will always be slightly lacking in some there. Either you wish you had more range so you could lock the entire tile down, or you do really have to work for your early stacks, which is what I consider acceptable, because once you build it up you're perfectly fine, but the early game is a little bit risky. So the first thing you'll notice is this build has 250% range. This is super important, as my goal here is to lock down the entire tile so you never really have a chance to die, and you won't really have to rely on having 15 mutation stacks. Your Gloom now reaches out to 40 meters, which is enough to lock down the entire tile, and your larva covers 30 meters, which is good enough. This can pull in so many enemies at once, you shouldn't really ever be able to be one shot. So now let's test out this final endurance build. I'm going to proc growing power here, and this time look, I'm going to cast my larva over here. It can actually suck in all of those heavy garners from over there as well as behind me. This is what a 30 meter pull looks like. This is what's going to keep you safe and the enemies off your back. Plus, more enemies pulled in means more enemies killed and more energy orbs produced, meaning your energy economy is even easier and you're proccing even more arcane eruptions for the AoE CC. Once they're tagged and down, they're staying down. So the remaining footage in this video is just steel path setups. The one I'm showing you here is actually the solo build, the second build, the one that doesn't really have any adaptation or vitality and requires you to build up mutation stacks to gain any kind of longevity on survivability against one-taps. So the first thing you want to do is larva things, proc your growing power, cast your slow. Now you're going to be spamming your virulence through this to build up your stacks. If you do run a little bit low on energy, kill them off with your melee and find a new bunch to set it up again. Once you've made it to 15 stacks, you are now safe. You can continue to play it as normal and ramp up your stacks further. You've avoided the scenario where you get one shot and you don't have stacks to survive. Arcane Eruption will also be super important, as you see there. It immediately CCs everything in a very large radius, giving you a safe haven. Over the first few minutes, if you continue to use your larva and your virulence, you will be able to reach 100 stacks very quickly, and 100 stacks is essentially worth 6 separate lives. Now when Acolytes spawn, the 95% slow does work on them, and actually the ragdoll even does affect them. You'll see this Acolyte did get pulled up, however they will shake free the ability very quickly within I think 4 seconds, but this is your moment to shine, to ragdoll them, keep them in place. They can't even fight back at all, prime them up, slash them down. Acolytes do not scale with endurance, they will always be at 135, so you should be able to make quick work of them. Now my thoughts on Nidus. I do think his kit works out. It is a little bit gimmicky, but it is very functional. It leaves a little bit to be desired because it does force a certain kind of playstyle in solo runs at the start, and you do always have a risk of getting very bad RNG and just being blindsided and dying. This should not happen though. So as a whole, I would say it is a pretty good build. On the engagement side, you mostly just press 2 prime things and kill them, so it isn't that fantastic, but it can work out. For the people that were looking forwards to a Nidus Gloom build, as well as the person that recommended to me to try it out, I hope you're satisfied with what I came up with. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 75.8% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to show you all I can about Tempestarii and any new content or updates that happen with the hotfixes. I'm also going through the build series for Gloom and trying to find any new synergies of any new mods or anything that comes out, so you don't want to miss out on that. That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.